Okay, so that was an event. So today on our show, we are going to be talking about what Apple's spring-loaded event means for future products coming from Apple. The design direction has obviously changed. Everyone was talking about this new iMac being basically an iPad Pro on a stick, and I can see what they were talking about, but there's a lot more there to break down. So we're going to look at the history of Apple design and how it's influenced this new iMac, but first, run the titles. iCave's spring-loaded coverage is brought to you by CleanMyMac X, the all-in-one cleaning and optimizing software for your Mac. No matter how flawless and perfect new Apple products may seem, they still need good care to keep the best performance, protect from vulnerabilities, and prevent possible issues. CleanMyMac X is an app that handles these issues and helps to top up your Mac's performance. CleanMyMac X is more than just a Mac cleaner. It doesn't show you the files you already know you have, it deep scans your Mac for temporary files and app leftovers that aren't so easy to find manually. A single smart scan examines your system for log files and user cache that's no longer needed, runs a quick malware check, and does some optimization to help speed up your Mac, all in just a few seconds. Gives you more control over apps and their files. Find out what apps and programs you have on your Mac and uninstall those that you don't need. Plus, CleanMyMac X recently rolled out native Apple Silicon support for Macs. If you're a lucky owner of the latest Mac model, be ready to enjoy a smooth ride at faster CleanMyMac X performance with your new Mac, as well as keeping track of permissions so you can see which apps are accessing your Mac's camera and microphone. Link is in the description to check out a free trial, which of course helps to support this channel too. I'm iCave Dave and I simplify Apple so that everything just works for you, and if you want the latest Apple news, leaks and rumours every weekday at 12 UTC, as well as some kind of cool design breakdowns like this, like this video, subscribe to the channel and ring the notification bell so you can join my notification squad, and there are a couple of new members so we might as well get straight into it. So, iMacs. There's not much to say on performance as we already have M1s, but I'm pretty sure that all of my YouTuber colleagues in the US and other places that didn't get the product announcement at night probably have all the features covered by now, so as usual, I'm more interested in what we saw yesterday will mean for tomorrow for Apple. So, breaking down the design of the iMac itself, it follows the iconic iMac design configuration with the chin, but the chin has a reason now. All of the computer is in that chin, and the speakers, and then behind those bold white bezels, it's all display. This thing references design elements from all of the PowerPC iMacs, in my opinion, which I absolutely love. Now, one of my problems with the Intel generation of Macs in general is that it really lacked personality for me. And it wasn't just in terms of the ways the product looked, but also that because Apple was trying to use the same chips as everyone else, they weren't in control of very much. So thermals, performance, release dates, and somehow this lack of innovation in the internals seems to have leaked out into the exteriors. Before we get into the references to the older iMacs and the older Macs in general, I want to just point out that in August of last year, I did predict very colourful Apple Silicon Macs coming, and I feel like that was a win. So, into the references to the original Macs. So those white bezels and the colours in general are a clear design nod to the original iMac G3, which was the first one with the colours, and the original design that kind of made Apple more iconic in their designs from Johnny Ive and company. And actually the new keyboard and mouse are also very close in a lot of the design elements to those original ones too, with the colour accents, with the white, and actually the mouse itself has a lot of references. Then onto the idea of having the display be a display and the computer itself being in the chin, it reminds me of what Johnny Ive said about the G4, letting each part of the iMac be true to itself. That's why when Apple moved to LCD displays, they kept the computer itself in the domed foot of the iMac so that you could appreciate the thin and lightness of the display, which at the time was pretty special in a desktop. The overall design, of course, is a natural evolution of the iMac G5 with the aluminium foot as well as a seamless front glass, although it might have actually been polycarbonate back then, which runs across the whole of the front, including the chin, which, in the case of the new iMac 2, covers that whole face of the system, even though you've got the colour change behind it. So all in all, I'm really, really happy with this design, and the white bezels are a real departure, but it feels like in lighter office environments and in homes, they might actually disappear more into the real world than the current black ones do. We'll see. I definitely think that the skepticism people are seeing over this design at the moment will probably disappear when they see them in person and the design and the build quality. I'm looking at you, MKBHD. There's a lot of other stuff that will influence Apple's designs going forward, and also some of the functionality stuff, and I think we're actually getting some references to some of the things that we'd heard rumours about in completely different ways. For example, there was center stage for the iPad Pro using an ultra-wide camera on the front in order to kind of track you around the room for FaceTime calls. Now, we'd heard about a concept that was talking more about having an iPad sitting on like a robot arm. I don't think that was the truth at all. I think somebody heard iPad that tracks you around the room and thought, well, it must be moving around somehow. Actually, I think center stage is what was probably being talked about at the time. Maybe something was lost in translation. So center stage uses an ultra-wide camera on the front of your iPad Pro, and as a result of that, it will basically do face detection, I think, and intelligently track in software by cropping into the image because it's got a nice chunky sensor there. So that is probably more likely to be what they were talking about. It's a much more elegant way of doing it than sticking an iPad on a robot arm. And also, obviously, the iPads have great speakers already in them, but you would be able to pair it with your HomePods at home and things like that for your calls. So I think that's probably what we were hearing about. I think the idea of having a robot iPad is probably a little bit less likely. Then the coloured iMacs as well, I think, is going to influence laptops as well going forward, and that might seem a little bit scary to people at this point because those are really bold. But I think over the next few weeks, when we see some of these in person, or we start to see real-world videos of them where people have done their own stuff, because pretty much what we've seen on the screen there has been renders. It's high-end renders that Apple does. It's not actually showing you the physical products. The only time I think we got a glimpse of the actual products was in the background when we were in the labs talking about the cameras, and there were a lot of these iMacs sitting around in Apple's labs there, as you would expect. But in terms of how the MacBook designs could look, I'm thinking influences from the old G3 iBooks as well, but I'm working with Apple tomorrow right now on visualizing what these could look like and how they would work. But we've definitely had patents that we've talked about around titanium MacBooks that included coatings and dye injection into pores in the titanium itself, which all makes sense now when we've seen this. Now, one thing that I would point out is that Apple really managed to double down on their secrecy with these iMacs. Nobody had a really good, accurate look at what these things would look like beforehand. We'd heard there might be colours from John Prosser and a few others, which obviously that turned out, but they weren't thinking these colours. The design language itself, we'd heard, looks a bit like an iPad Pro on a stick. Yes, it does, but also nobody kind of envisaged that to then have the big thick chin with all of the computer in there and be quite as thin as it is. Now, because of the thinness, this is something that MKBHD pointed out as well. I've referenced him a couple of times now, but the headphone jack is actually too long to plug in from the back, so it now plugs in at the side, which is a lot easier to get to if you need to get to it quickly, so that's helpful. But it's also like, it just points out quite how thin this is. He mentioned as well, it's about the thickness of an Apple Watch, which is just crazy for a computer that's going to be that powerful. And speaking of power, obviously M1X is something that I really hoped that we would be seeing. I do think that we are going to see M1X pretty soon, and I think part of the reason for that is I think we are going to get a May event. Probably a bit dangerous to say. I'm not betting any body parts or any body hair on this. However, the fact that these things are not going to ship until mid-May makes me think they're holding off on the shipping, not because they're not ready to ship, because we've heard for a while that they are ready to ship, but I think mid-May is also when we're going to see an Apple event that introduces M1X. That's when we're going to see MacBook Pros. That's when we're going to see the M1X iMacs, and possibly a Mac Mini too. And I think the reason that they're holding off on shipping is that they don't get a whole bunch of returns very quickly, because people bought this and then the M1X was announced and then they returned these to get the M1X. I think they want to make sure that people aren't going to go and buy something else. They see the design direction that Apple's going in, which is what we've been talking about today, and then once that next event gets announced, which, let's be honest, is probably only going to be 3 to 4 weeks away that they announce the event, maybe even 3 weeks, because they're going to then have the event mid-May so that it's in time for WWDC, so that people can be working on M1X stuff when they're developing using the new stuff that comes out. That makes all the sense. So let's see what happens with that. But I think we could have another event next month ahead of WWDC. Now, the other thing that surprised me was that everyone was shocked that M1 is now in the iPad Pro. I thought it was going to be A14X, A14X, and M1, as I've said forever, are the same chip. Wasn't going to be a different piece of silicon. The only difference that, the only thing that's really surprised me is, number one, they put the name M1 on it, which now is going to make everyone think that they can run macOS on it. And unless they drop that at WWDC, which I don't think they will, but who knows now, then that's going to just confuse people a little bit, I think. But also the fact that you can configure the memory on it. Now, that surprised me a lot. I didn't think you were going to be able to configure the memory even on the M1s when they were first on their way. But there we go. You can now get up to 16 gigs of RAM in an iPad Pro, which is just absolutely crazy. Now, we will talk more about the iPad Pro stuff later in the week, but if I'm completely honest, I'm not that excited about it. I know a lot of people are, and probably more people are excited about that than about the Macs, but I'm excited about Macs, so I'm going to talk about Macs. Sorry. But we're going to get into Notification Squad and then into some iCave answers, because we had a bunch of questions come through from you guys. Change of plan, editing time, David here. We're not going to do iCave answers in this show. I'm going to edit those up. They're going to come out later today, probably around about 5 PM. So if you asked a question and I said it would be answered on today's show, well, that's when you will find it. Just because I'm running out of time on this edit, and yeah, just thought I would. I can do what I want. It's my channel. Stop judging me. So, Notification Squad, new members. We have Sturgis Mike and Peter Holdman. Thank you so much for joining. If you want to join, like the video, subscribe to the channel, and ring the notification bell. Let me know in the comments that you've done all those things using hashtag Notification Squad, and you'll get a shout out too. That's it. Thanks so much for watching, guys. We'll see you in the next one.